All right, folks. Well, this was some big news of the day. This was a big story. Mark Zuckerberg has replaced fact checking on Meta with X style community notes. That is now in the offing for 2025. So, Facebook and Instagram owner Meta said Tuesday it's scrapping its third party fact checking program and replacing it with community notes written by users similar to the model used by Elon Musk's social media platform X. Starting in the U.S., Meta will end its fact-checking program with independent third parties. The company said it decided to end the program because expert fact-checkers had their own biases and too much content ended up being fact-checked. Instead, it will pivot to a community notes model that uses crowdsourced fact-checking contributions from users. So what did we say, folks? What have we always said here? Big tech, they have a certain ideology. Their ideology is more libertarian than anything else. And what really motivates them is they don't want to work. They really don't want to work. They don't want problems. So when the cultural winds blow one way, they'll go that way. When the cultural winds blow another way, they will turn around on a dime. And that is what Mark Zuckerberg has done. So this went everywhere this morning. This is about 5 minutes, but we're going to play the whole thing because this outlines what an article would outline. And better hear it straight from the source. So new, Mark Zuckerberg announces the end of fact checkers on Facebook, replacing them with community notes similar to X. So he outlines some changes in the Facebook censorship regime coming this year.
I want to talk about something important today because it's time to get back to our roots around free expression on Facebook and Instagram. I started building social media to give people a voice. I gave a speech at Georgetown.
All right, so this is like some of the episodes with Data where they tried to make him look more human.
Yeah.
That's what this is like. It's like, oh, what happened? What happened to the white sheen?
Right.
It's like they put some kind of makeup on him.
Well, right while we're paused, right away, I was going to pause this anyway, because right away, that's a lie. He created Facebook so that incels at Harvard could rate women based on their looks, rate their female classmates on their looks. That was really the light bulb moment that was the inception of Facebook. It wasn't to give people a voice.
Well, that's like we're always like, oh, they wanted to tax the United States on tea, when really they just wanted to look up the skirts of upper class women.
Right.
That was really what incited the American Revolution.
Years ago about the importance of protecting free expression, and I still believe this today. But a lot has happened over the last several years. There's been widespread debate about potential harms from online content. Governments and legacy media have pushed to censor more and more. A lot of this is clearly political, but there's also a lot of legitimately bad stuff out there. Drugs, terrorism, child exploitation. These are things that we take very seriously, and I want to make sure that we handle responsibly.
Okay, well, lucky for you, there are laws against all of those things. And this was always the argument against this aggressive online and social media censorship, is that anything that fits the categories you just mentioned is already illegal. So you don't have to make extra rules preventing child exploitation or drug trafficking or anything like that. There are already laws against that. So if someone is abusing your platform to do any of those things, they're breaking the law. So we have a system in place to deal with people who do that. We don't need you taking it on yourself to deem what is and is not, say, medical misinformation, where expressing the wrong opinion about a vaccine is grounds for termination or suspension or penalization.
Well, none of this was ever anything that these CEOs wanted to do.
Right.
It's not like Zuckerberg was sitting there saying, we got to stop the medical misinformation. This was under pressure from the Democrats. And this is the side of the censorship industrial complex where, yes, Trump winning on the face of it is good for speech. I will be very interested to see how much this carries over to Israel content as the Trump administration takes power and as they are all in on that genocide and they own that genocide. So now, if I had to guess, you're going to be able to say whatever you want about sex, pronouns, all the MAGA culture war bugaboos, but the Israel censorship is going to remain in place or actually get a lot worse.
Yeah, and we certainly have markers in place to determine, which direction that goes in, because Facebook and Instagram are notoriously the most censorious when it comes to the Israel topic.
Yes.
I got into a fight with a Zionist on Facebook, and I hardly go on Facebook anymore. But back when I was on Facebook, all I would do was fight with people about political shit. And, it's Facebook, people get nasty on Facebook, like people get nasty online. That's the whole keyboard warrior trope. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So I got into it with a Zionist, and I did not threaten him. I didn't slur him, obviously. I wasn't particularly friendly. I used some hostile language, as I've used 1,000 times before in 1,000 other arguments. Within seconds, Facebook took it down. So don't tell me there's not an extra, very thick layer of censorship around the Israel issue. There is. And so we will know pretty quickly whether that loosens up or gets even tighter. All right, let's keep going.
So we built a lot of complex systems to moderate content. But the problem with complex systems is they make mistakes. Even if they accidentally censor just 1% of posts, that's millions of people.
The problem with complex systems is we're too lazy and greedy to staff them with human beings who will exercise independent and autonomous judgment. We just set an AI censor bot to fuck you when they sniff something out. And we like dressing like we are worth $35, even though I'm one of the richest men in the country, which means we're lazy. We don't like to work. And so we don't care enough about our users to actually enforce terms of service fairly and consistently. That's another thing. Even if you're pro terms of service, even if you think we need all these rules, nobody can argue the enforcement is completely arbitrary with no accountability whatsoever. It's like that across all platforms. Facebook, no exception there.
My entire life force is in this necklace.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
And we've reached a point where it's just too many mistakes and too much censorship. The recent elections also feel like a cultural tipping point towards once again prioritizing speech. So we're going to get back to our roots and focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our policies, and restoring free expression on our platforms. More specifically, here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to get rid of fact checkers and replace them with community notes similar to X, starting in the US. After Trump first got elected in 2016, the legacy media wrote nonstop about how misinformation was a threat to democracy. We tried in good faith to address those concerns without becoming the arbiters of truth. But the fact checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially.
You don't say. You don't say. Now, it just occurred to you that was true? You didn't know that all along? Come on, Zuckerberg.
Well, but they had Taibbi already dropped an article about this, like literally as we've been doing the show. And he points out in some of the released censorship files, Facebook, everybody focuses on Twitter, but Facebook came up in that as well. This is what I will say. This is not a case of, say, liberal Democrats came out and suddenly sang a different tune on speech. These Silicon Valley guys, they're basically libertarian on things like that. Like I think if you just left them alone, they would let whatever be on there.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, you want cowfuckers.com, whatever.
Yeah, right.
I really don't think they care. So this is not. I don't feel like it's so much a flip flop as now the boot. He feels like the boot is off his neck.
He just said it's a new cultural moment.
Right. So now he can just go back to doing what he wanted to do. Like I said, we'll see how that works out with the Israel issue.
Right.
Especially in the US. So over the next couple of months, we're going to phase in a more comprehensive community notes system. Second, we're going to simplify our content policies and get rid of a bunch of restrictions on topics like immigration and gender that are just out of touch with mainstream discourse. What started as a movement to be more inclusive has increasingly been used to shut down opinions and shut out people with different ideas, and it's gone too far. So I want to make sure that people can share their beliefs and experiences on our platforms.
Okay, now before we move on from that, that's obviously true. Now, the question you should ask yourself is, what business was it of ours to enforce opinions about gender and immigration in the first place?
Sure.
Why are there
Sure.
rules and regulations around that? You're not going to commit a crime by expressing an unpopular opinion about gender or about immigration. Now, in terms of other fields like medicine, yeah, you want to have a medical misinformation policy against, say, impersonating a doctor and giving advice as though you're a doctor when you're not. You can create that policy, but guess what? There's laws against impersonating doctors, right? So again, it's like, do you need to create that? Like, you can't go, if you go and you give someone medical advice with a fake diploma on your wall and say this is coming from a doctor, they can fucking sue you. Like, that's obviously a breach of law.
Sure.
And so when it comes to immigration, why were there rules about what you could and could not say about that? Why were there ever rules about that?
Well, again, I mean, that has nothing really to do with Zuckerberg's personal opinions.
Right.
It has the real question is, why did the Democrats, and let's face it, we're really talking about the Democrats.
Of course, yes, absolutely.
Why did they feel like they had a vested interest in imposing standards of speech like that? And that's where you want to talk about, we talk a lot about how the left has undermined its moral authority because of its position on economics. It's also lent a lot of fuel to the idea that leftism is totalitarian, because we saw what these people did with power. Right. And what they would have done if you had given them more power.
Exactly.
And it was extremely totalitarian. Let's control. If we can't control what people think, we'll control what they say. It was very Orwellian, and it was incredible to me how many people who are just rank and file voters just mindlessly went along with that. I just kept saying, hasn't anyone read 1984? Like, you understand it was a cautionary tale. It wasn't intended as advice, right?
Right.
It wasn't meant to be a roadmap for how to construct society. Like, how you can miss the fact that Newspeak was a statement about trying to control people through changing the language, and then be running around with every other day, you know, we have to stop using the term vagina because 100 years ago, doctors used that to de-emphasize female pleasure. Shut the fuck up. Like, it was just incredible. And now this is the nice thing about the cultural moment we're in. You're not seeing so many of these busybodies anymore.
Right.
Like, even they realize the moment has passed and nobody wants to hear from them.
Exactly. And that's why he said the cultural moment has changed. He just said that in plain English.
Third, we're changing how we enforce our policies to reduce the mistakes that account for the vast majority of censorship on our platforms. We used to have filters that scanned for any policy violation. Now, we're going to focus those filters on tackling illegal and high-severity violations. And for lower severity violations, we're going to rely on someone reporting an issue before we take action. The problem
so a
is that
human being has to feel like there's been a breach of law. We're not just going to sick a censor bot. So if I tell an Israel supporter to go fuck himself, that doesn't automatically get flagged by a robot anymore. I mean, we'll see. Again, is that exception going to remain? But that's interesting. So now the AI systems are going to focus on severe violations and possible legal violations, but everything else we're going to leave up to the users. That's a good step.
Yep.
I like that one.
Yeah.
Also,
Might
that
make
streamlines
Facebook
it too.
relevant again.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, I'm sure Doge would like that too.
Yeah.
Filters make mistakes, and they take down a lot of content that they shouldn't. So by dialing them back, we're going to dramatically reduce the amount of censorship on our platforms. We're also going to tune our content filters to require much higher confidence before taking down content. The reality is that this is a trade-off. It means we're going to catch less bad stuff, but we'll also reduce the number of innocent people's posts and accounts that we accidentally take down. Fourth, we're bringing back civic content.
All right, before we get into fourth, I just want to pause this one more time, because if you notice, so he's going back to what they did pre-Trump. If you remember, when Trump won, they hauled Mark Zuckerberg into Congress, you know, and they made him basically sort of bend to their will, because people on the sort of Democrat side of the aisle had long thought Facebook was too loose on speech. Don't forget, they twisted him into doing this, and now that he feels that Trump is back and that the liberals have shut the fuck up, unlike the first time he won, that he's free to sort of go back to the old way of doing things, which errs on the side of not taking down content. The libs were in hysterics. They said, you let the Russians buy $100,000 worth of ads, and that's why Hillary's not the president, right? Yeah.
I mean, I'll be curious what Google/YouTube does, because if you remember, YouTube used to be a free for all.
Yeah.
They just let the algorithm determine what was boosted by what people actually watched.
Right.
They changed that algorithm, and it specifically hurt this space, because before that, if you just left it up to people, nobody watched the CNN videos.
Right, exactly.
They only watched the independent news, which makes sense. Why would you come to YouTube to watch CNN?
Right.
You could just put on your TV and watch CNN.
Right, exactly.
While the community asked to see less politics because it was making people stressed, so we stopped recommending these posts. But it feels like we're in a new era now, and we're starting to get feedback that people want to see this content again. So we're going to start phasing this back into Facebook, Instagram, and Threads while working to keep the communities friendly and positive. Fifth, we're going to move our trust and safety and content moderation teams out of California, and our US-based content review is going to be based in Texas.
Boom.
As we work to promote free expression, I think that it will help us build trust to do this work in places where there is less concern about the bias of our teams. Finally, we're going to work with President Trump to push back on governments around the world that are going after American companies and pushing to censor more. The US has the strongest constitutional protections for free expression in the world. Europe has an ever-increasing number of laws institutionalizing censorship and making it difficult to build anything innovative there. Latin American countries have secret courts that can order companies to quietly take things down. China has censored our apps from even working in the country. The only way that we can push back on this global trend is with the support of the US government. And that's why it's been so difficult over the past 4 years when even the US government has pushed for censorship. By going after us and other American companies, it has emboldened other governments to go even further. But now we have the opportunity to restore free expression, and I am excited to take it. It'll take time to get this right, and these are complex systems. They're never going to be perfect. There's also a lot of
If you see a woman jerking off a horse on your cousin's page, just bear with us. We're working on it.
We're working on it.
Doesn't happen overnight.
illegal stuff that we still need to work very hard to remove. But the bottom line is that after years of having our content moderation work focus primarily on removing content, it is time to focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our systems, and getting back to our roots about giving people voice. I'm looking forward to this next chapter. Stay good out there, and more to come soon.
All right, so I think that last bit... Yeah, there you go. Exactly. I think that last bit he was being honest about was what we've said. I don't think they ever really wanted to put in the work and the time hiring,
why would they?
Trust and safety teams. And yeah, why would they?
No, I think in the end, most of these Silicon Valley guys ideologically are much more let it rip.
Of course. Well, yeah. Yeah, obviously. You could have said something about it. I mean, this is the thing. They're just lazy. They just want to count money. They don't really have much conviction either way. This is why, look, we've been rightfully piling on Elon the last few weeks. Elon in Brazil made some noise that he was going to fight them. He didn't. He ended up caving. Right. Yeah. But he made some noise about it because he wants to be seen as someone who's going to stand his ground. These other guys, Zuckerberg, he's a fucking pushover, man. Right. Kamala wins. Sure. All right, I guess we got to take down the COVID stuff. He He sent that letter to Biden saying that he had been censored. And now Trump wins. All right, I guess we don't have to do that anymore. So I guess we're back, right? They just do what's easy. They just do what's easy. But it is a positive on the whole. Like I said, we will see how this shapes out. Those are pretty drastic changes, especially since, I know because we make a living on social media. Facebook and Instagram, notoriously the worst.
Please clap.